Thank you so much for watching this performance of Colonial Capers by John Beck. I wanted to give you a couple things to look out for while you're learning and while you're practicing this piece. First thing is all the dynamics and all the repeats. There's a lot of material, a lot of information for you to digest as a performer. My recommendation is to highlight, circle with a colored pencil or a pen, do something to catch your eye every time we have a change in the music. I know for myself personally, I've highlighted all the dynamics, all the crescendos, all the decrescendos, and I've also highlighted all of the repeats so that I don't lose track of them when I perform this piece. Another thing that we have to be careful of is our roll quality. So sometimes they're short rolls, sometimes they're long rolls. I chose to do a double stroke roll because of some of the numeric markings given at the beginning of the piece. And when we do a double stroke roll, we want to make sure that all of those notes sound nice and even. And if you're having trouble doing that, you may need to revisit your double stroke technique where you're producing an even sound and supporting the second note in your double stroke, not just throwing the wrist down and having that second note sound weaker. Another thing that's really important about a piece like this is the separation of the accents from the non-accents. It's a very rudimental style, and because of that, there's a cool second layer that's created when we have our accents and our non-accents separated. So make sure that you're making it clear enough that it's heard as far as the emphasis that you're putting on those accented notes, but also make sure that you're not going so hard that you're potentially damaging the drum head that you're playing on. So I always think about just raising my hand higher than the other stick heights surrounding those accents, and that usually produces a sound strong enough that you can hear clearly when hearing me perform. The last thing that I'll say about this piece is make sure that all of your embellishments are well rehearsed, whether it's drags or flams. We want to make sure that in the flam paradiddles, in the flams, and even some of the drag rudiments like lesson 25 and the drag paradiddles, we want to make sure that all of those drags are consistent from the beginning to the end of the piece. So if you're not comfortable producing a left-handed flam or a left-handed drag, or same thing on the right hand, make sure you spend some time developing that before you approach this piece. Otherwise, when you put it into context, you have so many opportunities for the listener to hear where you're going to be changing that. I guess the last thing that I'll say is in the middle of the first page, when we get to the fermatas on the long rolls, and it tells us to play as fast as possible, be careful that you pick a tempo that is safe enough in your performance. So when I'm practicing something to get as fast as possible, I will push myself to the upper limits and even to the point where I start making mistakes. However, when I go to perform, I'm going to pick a tempo slightly slower than that so that I don't mess up. And it'll still be just as impressive because it will be faster than what was happening before, but it'll also leave whoever's listening hoping or thinking maybe they could have played it even faster, as opposed to, wow, they played it too fast and they kind of lost control and had a couple of mistakes. So ultimately, practice with a metronome, find a tempo that you're comfortable with, and while you're practicing, try to increase that to make it as impressive. But when you perform, I would always err on the side of staying safe. That's all I have for practice tips. I hope you enjoyed this little video and this performance, and I wish you all the best as you continue to learn Colonial Capers.